Somewhere inside Yale University's Binet Rare Book Library sits a manuscript that has defeated every codebreaker, linguist, and artificial intelligence system ever aimed at it. For over 600 years, nobody has been able to read a single word. Not the NSA. Not World War II's greatest cryptographers. Not modern AI trained on every known language. 240 pages of elegant handwriting in a script that matches no known alphabet. Illustrations of plants that don't exist. Star charts that map no known sky. Naked women bathing in green pools connected by impossible plumbing. This is the Voynich Manuscript. And after 6 centuries, we still don't know who wrote it, what language it's in, or what it says. Let's start with what we know for certain. The manuscript contains 240 pages, though some are missing. It's written on vellum, calfskin parchment. In 2009, radiocarbon dating placed the vellum between 1404 and 1438. The ink was applied shortly after, meaning this is genuinely a medieval document, not a later forgery. It contains approximately 170,000 characters in an unknown script, using an alphabet of 20 to 30 distinct symbols. There are over 35,000 words. And not a single one of them has ever been translated. The manuscript is divided into 5 distinct sections, each stranger than the last. The botanical section, 113 pages of detailed plant illustrations. Not a single plant matches any known species on Earth. The astronomical section, circular diagrams that resemble star charts and zodiac symbols, but don't match any known constellation map. The biological section, naked women connected by tubes and pools of green and blue liquid. Nobody knows what this represents. The pharmaceutical section, drawings of plant roots and jars, possibly recipes. And the final section, pages of dense text with no illustrations at all. 5 sections. 0 explanations. Here's what makes the Voynich Manuscript truly impossible. If it's a hoax, a meaningless jumble of symbols, then it's the most sophisticated hoax in history. Because statistical analysis shows the text follows the same mathematical patterns as real languages. Zipf's law, the frequency distribution of words, matches natural language perfectly. The entropy, the information density per character, is consistent throughout. There are word patterns, grammar-like structures, and regional variations across sections. No random gibberish has ever replicated these properties. Either someone in the 1400s understood information theory 5 centuries before it was invented, or this text actually means something. In 1912, a Polish-Lithuanian book dealer named Wilfried Voynich purchased a collection of old manuscripts from a Jesuit college near Rome. Among them was an unusual book, no title, no author, no date, written in a script he had never seen. Voynich was no amateur. He had spent decades dealing in rare medieval manuscripts. He immediately recognized this was something extraordinary. He spent the rest of his life trying to decode it. He failed. But he gave the manuscript his name and launched a mystery that would consume hundreds of brilliant minds for the next century. But Voynich wasn't the first owner. Hidden inside the manuscript was a letter, dated 1665, from Johannes Marcus Marci, rector of Prague University, sending the book to Athanasius Kircher, a famous Jesuit scholar in Rome. The letter mentioned that the manuscript had previously been owned by Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II, who reportedly paid 600 gold ducats for it. In today's money, that's roughly $80,000. For a book nobody could read. Rudolf II was obsessed with the occult, alchemy, and secret knowledge. His court in Prague was filled with astrologers, alchemists, and magicians. Someone convinced him this book contained secrets worth a fortune. But who sold it to him? Two names dominate the early history. John Dee, the famous English mathematician, astrologer, and advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. Dee visited Rudolf's court in Prague in the 1580s and was known to sell manuscripts and curiosities. His associate Edward Kelly, a convicted forger and self-proclaimed spirit medium, was even more suspicious. Kelly claimed he could communicate with angels through a crystal ball and translate their language. Some historians believe Kelly forged the manuscript and sold it to Rudolph as a genuine ancient text. But there's a problem with this theory. The radiocarbon dating places the vellum 150 years before Dee and Kelly were born. Between 1438 and 1580, the manuscript simply vanishes. Over 140 years with no record, no mention, no trace. Where was it? Who had it? What was it used for? We have no idea. The trail picks up again only when it appears in Rudolph's collection. Before that, silence. This gap is one of the manuscript's deepest mysteries. A 240-page book, elaborately illustrated, clearly expensive to produce, and nobody mentioned it for a century and a half. Either it was hidden deliberately, or it was in the hands of someone who didn't want the world to know it existed. The botanical section is the largest, 113 pages of detailed plant illustrations. Each page shows a single plant with roots, stems, leaves, and flowers drawn in careful detail. They look like real botanical illustrations from the medieval period. There's just one problem. Botanists have compared these drawings to every known plant species on Earth. Not a single one matches. Some have features from multiple different plants combined into one. Others have structures that simply don't exist in nature, roots that spiral into geometric patterns, leaves that branch in impossible ways. Either the author was illustrating plants from a region we haven't identified, or these plants never existed at all. The astronomical section contains some of the manuscript's most baffling pages. Large circular diagrams, some folding out to 4 times the normal page size, show concentric rings filled with stars, moons, and what appear to be zodiac symbols. Some pages show recognizable zodiac signs: Pisces, Aries, Taurus. But the surrounding text and symbols don't match any known astronomical tradition. One famous fold-out page shows 9 concentric circles with stars and text, possibly a cosmological diagram. But of what? No astronomer has ever been able to map these charts to any real sky. They could be astrological. They could be cosmological. They could be pure imagination. And then there's the biological section. This is where the manuscript gets truly strange. Page after page shows small naked women, sometimes dozens per page, immersed in pools of green or blue liquid, connected by an elaborate network of tubes and channels. Some women appear to be floating. Others are climbing into or out of the pools. The tubes connect different pools in complex patterns that resemble plumbing, or perhaps blood vessels. Or perhaps something else entirely. No scholar has ever produced a convincing explanation for these pages. They don't match any known medical tradition, any known religious symbolism, any known alchemical process. They are, quite simply, inexplicable. One page in particular has obsessed researchers for decades. A massive fold-out, 6 pages wide when fully opened, showing what appears to be a map or cosmological diagram. 9 circular rosettes connected by causeways, surrounded by tiny details that might be buildings, mountains, or volcanoes. Some researchers see a map of northern Italy. Others see a diagram of the universe. Others see a purely symbolic representation of something we can't identify. In 2014, a researcher claimed to identify the rosettes as real locations, including a volcano that matches the shape of one illustration. But the identification remains disputed. The fold-out keeps its secrets. In the 1970s, a cryptographer named Prescott Currier made a startling discovery. He found that the manuscript appeared to be written in 2 distinct languages, or at least 2 different statistical patterns. He called them Language A and Language B. They use the same alphabet but with different word frequencies and character combinations. This suggested either two different authors, or one author writing in two different dialects or registers. It also meant the text wasn't random. Random text doesn't split into consistent statistical groups. Something systematic was happening on these pages. The deeper linguists looked, the stranger the text became. Voynich words have a rigid internal structure. Certain characters only appear at the beginning of words. Others only at the end. Some character combinations repeat with suspicious frequency, far more than in any known language. Words rarely repeat within the same line, which is extremely unusual for natural language. And perhaps strangest of all, there are almost no words longer than 10 characters. In most languages, word length follows a bell curve. In Voynich, it's as if someone imposed a strict maximum. This isn't how languages work. But it isn't how gibberish works either. In 2004, physicist Marcello Montemurro applied information entropy analysis to the Voynich text. His findings were remarkable. The text showed long-range correlations, meaning words on one page were statistically related to words several pages later. This is a hallmark of meaningful text. Random gibberish doesn't do this. Encrypted text doesn't do this. Only real language, text that carries meaning across paragraphs and chapters, shows this pattern. Montemurro concluded that the Voynich manuscript almost certainly contains genuine linguistic content. It means something. We just can't figure out what. But here's the paradox. While the text behaves like language in some ways, it violates the rules of every known language in others. There are no corrections anywhere in the manuscript, no crossed-out words, no insertions, no mistakes. In 240 pages of handwriting. That's virtually impossible for natural writing. The text also shows almost no borrowed words from other languages, something unheard of in medieval Europe where Latin, Greek, Arabic, and local languages constantly mixed. And the character repetition patterns are unlike anything seen in any cipher system ever created. It's not a known language. It's not a known cipher. It's not random. So what is it? During World War II, some of the greatest cryptographers in history turned their attention to the Voynich manuscript. William Friedman, the man who broke Japan's purple cipher, assembled a team of military codebreakers to attack the manuscript in their spare time. They worked on it for decades. They applied every technique that had cracked Enigma, Purple, and dozens of other wartime codes. They failed completely. Friedman eventually concluded the manuscript was written in a constructed language, an artificial language invented by its author. But he could never prove it. He died in 1969 with the manuscript still unbroken. In the 1960s and 70s, the United States National Security Agency, the most powerful signals intelligence organization on Earth, took its own crack at the Voynich manuscript. They assigned some of their best analysts. They had access to computing power that no civilian researcher could match. In 1978, they declassified their findings. The conclusion? They couldn't break it either. The NSA, the organization that intercepts and decodes communications from every nation on Earth, was defeated by a 600-year-old book. In the 2010s and 2020s, researchers turned artificial intelligence loose on the manuscript. Neural networks trained on hundreds of languages. Machine learning algorithms that had translated ancient Egyptian and Linear B. The results were tantalizing but inconclusive. One AI suggested Hebrew. Another suggested medieval Latin. A third suggested East Asian languages. None could produce a coherent translation. The machines, like the humans before them, could detect patterns. But they couldn't crack the code. Every few years, someone claims to have cracked the Voynich manuscript. In 2014, a botanist claimed the plants were from Mexico. In 2017, a researcher claimed it was abbreviated Latin. In 2019, a linguist claimed proto-Romance. every single claim has been debunked by peer review. The pattern is always the same: partial match, wild extrapolation, media announcement, then destruction by experts within weeks. The Voynich Manuscript has become a graveyard of academic reputations. The most controversial theory: it's all meaningless. In 2004, computer scientist Gordon Rugg demonstrated that a device called a cardang grill, a card with holes cut in it, placed over a table of syllables, could generate text with statistical properties similar to Voynich. His argument: a skilled forger in the 1400s could have produced the entire manuscript using this simple tool, creating text that looks like language but carries no meaning. The motive? Selling a fake magical book to Emperor Rudolph for 600 gold ducats. But critics point out that Rugg's method doesn't perfectly replicate all the manuscript's properties. And it doesn't explain why someone would create 240 pages of elaborate illustrations for a con. What if the Voynich Manuscript is written in a real language, one that simply died out before anyone could record it? Hundreds of languages have gone extinct without leaving written records. In medieval Europe, isolated communities in the Caucasus, Central Asia, or remote islands could have developed writing systems that were never documented by outsiders. Linguist Stephen Back spent years attempting to identify individual words by matching plant illustrations to known species and working backwards to sound values. Before his death in 2017, he claimed to have identified a handful of words, including possible plant names. His work remains the most methodical attempt at translation. But even he admitted he was far from a breakthrough. Some theories are wilder. For decades, many believed the manuscript was written by Roger Bacon, a 13th-century English friar and early scientist. The radiocarbon dating disproved this. The vellum dates to after Bacon's death. Others have suggested extraterrestrial origin, a communication from another intelligence. There is, of course, zero evidence for this. The most interesting fringe theory: the manuscript is a women's health manual, written by women for women, in a deliberately obscured script to hide medical knowledge from the church. The bathing women, the plant remedies, the pharmaceutical section, all consistent with midwifery and herbal medicine. But this too remains unproven. Today, the Voynich Manuscript has its own global community. Thousands of amateur and professional researchers collaborate online, sharing theories, statistical analyses, and new discoveries. Yale University has digitized every page in high resolution; anyone can examine it. New papers are published every year. New AI models are trained on it regularly. And yet it remains unsolved. 600 years. Hundreds of the world's best minds. The most powerful computers ever built. And still, not a single word translated. The Voynich Manuscript doesn't just resist decoding. It seems to actively defy it. After 6 centuries of mystery, here is what science has confirmed beyond doubt. The vellum is genuine medieval parchment, dated 1404 to 1438. The ink was applied shortly after, not centuries later. The manuscript was not created as a modern forgery. The text has consistent statistical properties across all 240 pages, suggesting a single system, not random improvisation. The illustrations were drawn before the text was added, the writing flows around the images. And multispectral imaging has revealed no hidden text, no erased layers, no palimpsest. What you see is what was written. Once. With no corrections. By someone who knew exactly what they were doing. In 2014, researchers discovered something remarkable in the manuscript's margins. Faint, barely visible writing, erased but detectable under ultraviolet light. These ghostly annotations appear to be attempts by early owners to decode the text. Someone, centuries ago, was just as baffled as we are. They tried. They failed. They erased their notes. And the manuscript moved on to its next owner, still unread. This tells us something important: the manuscript has been unreadable for most of its existence. If it was ever meant to be read, the key was lost very early, perhaps within a generation of its creation. Why does a 600-year-old unreadable book matter? Because it represents something profound about human knowledge. We have decoded the human genome. We have translated ancient Sumerian. We have read Egyptian hieroglyphs that were silent for 2,000 years. We have sent probes to the edge of the solar system. And yet we cannot read 240 pages written by a single person 6 centuries ago. The Voynich Manuscript is a reminder that intelligence is not the same as understanding. That some puzzles may be genuinely unsolvable, not because we lack the tools, but because the key no longer exists anywhere in the universe. The Voynich Manuscript sits in its climate-controlled vault at Yale. 240 pages of perfect handwriting. Plants that grow nowhere on Earth. Stars that map no known sky. Women bathing in impossible pools. And a language that nobody, not in 600 years, has ever been able to read. Maybe one day, someone will crack it. Maybe a new AI model will find the pattern we've all missed. Maybe a lost document will surface that provides the key. Or maybe it will remain forever silent, a message from the past that we will never understand. Either way, it waits. It has been waiting for 600 years. It can wait a little longer.